business athletes, what is going on? Coming at you with another interesting, useful episode that I think is going to be very relevant to you. And it's this idea around the science of the cheat meal. Burn more fat by eating more. This is, I would say, one of the most requested topics, all around the cheat days and the cheat meals and the things that we love to enjoy eating in life, but you feel that you're at a point where it's holding you back, or you wonder if you can actually add it in, or maybe you tell yourself, I can't adopt this new diet because I love XYZ too much. How many times have we told ourselves that? You know, I really want to lose weight, but I just love cheese. I really, really want to get that body for that July vacation, but I just love French fries and burgers. And we fall into this trap of all or nothing, binary, black and white thinking, where we think that we either have to white knuckle the diet for the rest of our existence, or somehow when we eat these things, our result's going to completely implode on itself. And we're going to end up being one of those people that does 75 hard for the 8th time. Yeah, I'm talking to some of you guys. Because that binary thinking is the very thinking that's keeping you stuck. So today, talking about refeed meals, cheat meals, I'm going to be drilling into the tactics. I'm not just talking about the mindset around them and giving you a pep talk on how you need to be more disciplined. I'm going to give you the nuts and bolts mechanics of how I position these meals and actually get more results. A quick backstory. So I had a student come to me recently. This is a classic case. A woman who had been dieting, and she still had a bit of weight to lose. And she'd be dieting. And at a certain point, her body just basically said, screw you. It just stopped responding. And she was already consuming a low amount of calories. And now at this point, she's essentially painted herself into a corner because she's already doing a lot of workouts. She's already cutting her calories down substantially. At that point, what else is there? More stimulants? More caffeine? Add in some clenbuterol. I mean, it gets to the point where your metabolism has nowhere to go. And this is what happens with most people. So the reason why I want to share this with you is because you can actually add in these meals strategically and actually have them enhance your result. I'm not even talking about adding them in and just doing okay and just surviving it just to keep you sane. I'm literally talking about adding this in intentionally at the right time with the right things to re-stimulate your basal metabolic rate and sharpen insulin sensitivity so you actually get better results. So doesn't that sound appealing? So with that woman, I started to give her these little bursts of calories. I call them a refeed. I'm going to explain to you in a second why I call them a refeed. I just wanted to start this conversation by using the term cheat meal. But between us, I think it's a stupid term, and I hate it. Don't use the term cheat meal. Even though the title of this podcast says cheat meal, it's because it's used to get your attention. But the average person thinks in terms of cheat meals, like they're doing something taboo and something wrong, and it's not part of your process. We want to make it an integral strategy that actually gets you leverage. And so I increased this woman's refeed strategies. More calories. And guess what? She started to lose more weight again. I'm going to explain to you exactly how that even works. Because you probably think to yourself, Fraser, that just sounds ridiculous. How would that even be a thing? How can you eat more and lose fat? Well, I'm going to explain to you exactly how. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist in human biology to understand what I'm going to share with you. So, strap in, because this conversation, I would say, is an integral part of your long-term process. If you don't build out a good refeed strategy, you won't know what to do when you're in a birthday party situation. You won't know what to do when you want to go out for that date night. You won't know what to do when you need to give yourself a little bit of a mental break. And what will happen is you'll just do all the wrong things, and you'll drive your cravings up through the roof. Your digestion will hate you. You'll feel bloated. You'll feel tired. And you'll actually gain body fat and water retention. That's what most people do. And that's why they struggle. It's like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. I see this all the time. And so if you are someone that's done 75 hard 7 times, or you're someone that trains, does a pretty good job Monday through Friday, and then you let your hair down on the weekend, and you overeat, but you don't even train in the weekend, and you don't get conscious about your step count in the weekend, that's exactly why you're in the position you're in. And I'm going to explain to you how to change that. So the first thing I wanted to say was, if, as we come into spring at the time of this recording, if you want even more strategy beyond this, like if you want me to help you with these principles, get into my Anomaly Project 6-week course, or at the very least get into my Business Athlete Council. I always say this, and I'll just be honest. Professionals, if you consider yourself a pro, pros get pro help. All the guys and gals that come to me that I see are legitimate professionals. They get people in their corner in many different areas of their life. A lot of my guys and gals, they have me in their corner. They will have someone that usually is like a marriage or relationship person. They might even have a psychologist, like a performance psychologist. They'll have a massage therapist. So they have people in their team because they treat themselves like an athlete. If they want to win those championship games, recognize that they need to be dialed in. And guesswork and bootlegging stuff and going to WebMD is what amateurs do. And you will never feel ready to make the leap. You could easily just tell yourself that you're in a growing season, you're a building season right now. When I close this deal, when I've made this sale, then I'll get your help. That's also why you stay stuck. Because we all know that we say those things to ourselves over and over and over again, and we never actually break through. You have to force the breakthrough first, and then guess what happens? The result happens as a byproduct of you forcing the breakthrough. So you've got to flip the way you think. So I'm just saying that right out of the gate, because some of you guys, you operate like total amateurs, and it's why you have amateur physical results. And you can either get offended with this type of statement, or you can go, you know what, he's true. It's correct. And pull the trigger and act like a pro, and guess what? You will end up getting pro results. So I say this from a place of being carefrontational, where I think as long as you come from a place of love and respect and wanting to see people genuinely win, but at the same time challenging the narratives they tell themselves, that's a good thing. So the first thing that I'll challenge you with is this idea of cheat meals. You've got to stop using terms like that. I'm not a super woo-woo dude when it comes to the types of words we use. Some people are really about the wording. I do think the words have a real effect. So I'm not disregarding it at all. I think the words we choose have more of an effect on our habits and performance than we realize. And so this is why I bring it up. Because most people, when they use the term cheat meal, it's associated with doing bad stuff. It's associated with being taboo. It's associated with deviating from your system and your plan. And that is typically associated with terrible results. Like the binge eating. It's the binge eating mentality of like, I've been such a good boy or girl, and now I'm going to just wreck myself with a bunch of processed garbage. I like using the word refeed or free meal But refeed I like. Why do I like refeed? Because it implies strategy. It implies that you are refeeding the performance engine. You're refueling the system. That there is a system to this. There is a strategy to this. It's not just some haphazard bootlegging crap. You've been intentional. And so essentially, as you diet down, you are going to deplete your body of muscle glycogen, of stored liver glycogen, of just body fat. And refeeding is basically this principle that you're going to refeed the muscles to top up those glycogen stores so you can further enhance the way that you train. One of the driving mechanisms when it comes to actually continuing to lose body fat and adding refeed meals in is you must, and I repeat, you must put yourself into a physiological place where you build muscle. And that's only going to happen if you're driving extra calories and glucose into your muscle cells, the refeed. So there's a whole principle to this, right? And so we're not talking about it from an emotional standpoint. We're talking about it from like a full-blown strategy standpoint. You know, cheat meals to me is sort of emotionally driven, ultra-processed, no macro structure, no afterthought of the biofeedback that you'll experience. Refeeds, this strategic carbohydrate increase. It's controlled. It's timed with training. It's hormone and biofeedback aware. And again, I'm going to explain all this, so don't worry. I'm going to explain the mechanisms and all the things you need to be thinking about. You know, the main reason why people, when they're doing cheat meals and their body weight stalls, the main reason why their fat loss stalls in the first place is a hormone called leptin. So leptin drops. It's a fat burn. It's basically like a fat burning hormone. Coupled with that, you'll typically see a drop in thyroid metabolism. When you feel more tired and lethargic because your thyroid output is decreased, you'll typically move less. So your NEAT goes down, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Coupled with all of that, you'll usually see a drop in sex hormones. For the ladies, one of the common things that a lot of fitness competitors have happen is they lose their monthly cycle. They might be 25 years old and they lose their menstrual cycle because of that drop in sex hormones. But even in the guys, you'll see a drop in testosterone, and that's going to affect your mood. It affects your grittiness, like your drive. The body is basically down-regulating. So think about it like this. There's a concept called metabolic adaptation or metabolic down-regulation, where imagine if, your body's a very smart thing, by the way. Imagine if you are going to consistently consume 1,000 calories a day. Initially, your body's metabolism is still revving. Like if you've been consuming 2,000 a day, and now all of a sudden you go to 1,000, your body's metabolism, your thyroid function, your sex hormones, your insulin sensitivity, all of those things, your NEAT, all those things are still going to be revving. And what will happen is you'll lose a bunch of fat and weight to start with. So you'll come roaring out of the gate. This is what happens with people. They come roaring out of the gate. And really they're just kind of riding the wave that they've created for themselves. But then at a certain point, the body starts to catch up to itself. So it starts to say, okay, I get it. I'm only getting 1,000 calories a day now. And in order to maintain survival, like beating your heart and breathing your lungs and having your brain even work, I'm going to strategically down-regulate all systems in the body. Imagine if, with your phone or your computer, if you want to save the battery, you dim the screen. Like if I don't plug my laptop in, if I dim the screen, it saves the battery. The battery doesn't drain as fast. That's exactly what you're like. Your proverbial screen gets dimmed. What does that look like for you? It looks like the following. It looks like for the ladies, you start to see irregular or a loss of menstrual cycle. You might start to see your hair starts to thin, or you might start shedding more hair. You might notice that your skin feels more dry and it just doesn't feel like it's got that sort of collagen richness in it, the elastin in the collagen. You might notice that your nails feel brittle. You might notice that you get brain fog. Maybe you're feeling like you can't concentrate. Like if you're feeling like you are getting ADHD, sort of inability to concentrate, low mood, you feel tired, your energy feels low, those are all leading indicators of metabolic adaptation. Where basically your body's like, we need to become more economical with everything we do to make sure that we have enough fuel for survival. So it's not going to be thinking about procreation and reproduction. The only time your body will be thinking about that is when you have a surplus of calories. It will turn on the switch at that point. It'll go, okay, we're safe, we've got enough calories, we've got enough energy, let's turn on the switch. Anything outside of that, and all systems start to downregulate. That's why people feel so garbage as they diet down for their 75 hard goal or their diet challenge. Everyone does it. Everyone does this. They start doing a dieting challenge. They diet till their face is about to fall off. They metabolically downregulate themselves so much that their screen is dimmed constantly. They underperform, so they're getting brain fog. They're feeling tired, and they want to expect to operate like a high performer. How are you going to produce and operate like a high performer and then have energy to interact with your kids and your spouse if your screen is dimmed at 25% capacity? How's that going to happen? And that's why it becomes unsustainable. It's that metabolic corner you get painted into. I see this all the time. I see it all the time on social media. And I just kind of allow people to have their experience at this point. The way I think about it is I'm like, look, I'm out here sharing these tactics. I'm out here showing the results that I get with a lot of you guys. I'm out here leading from the front. If someone is going to choose to struggle because they don't want to have a conversation with me or another professional to get help, that's their choice. That's their path they have to walk. They clearly have to go through more struggle before they learn the hard way. And that's just the experience some people have to have. And I'm like, okay, I'm cool with that. But for those of you who want to play a high-level game, this stuff is really useful to know. So basically, the main reason why people struggle to stick with a diet long-term is because they get so much downregulation that none of their systems are really like feeling very good. And our goal with a strategic refeed is to basically reignite that system. Because think about this. If you're getting your screen dimmed and everything's operating substandard, and then you strategically spike your calories 1 or 2 times a week, and you rev up that system again, what do you think happens with your energy levels? What do you think happens with your production? What do you think happens with your mood? What do you think happens with your hormone output? All of these things improve. And I see this in the blood work, by the way. It's very, very uncommon to have someone who is aging, who has a lot of muscle mass, who's below 10% body fat, and is strong and has good blood work. That's not common. But that's what I've created myself. You're literally talking to a guy that has created that environment in himself. And the people that follow my path, they start to create that environment in themselves too. That's the difference. It's not, I don't want to say it's not hard, but it's one thing to get in good shape. It's another thing to get in shape and actually perform at a high level and sustain it. Very, very uncommon. A lot of the fitness people that you follow online, they can't do it. They'll get really jacked, But they come to me with their blood work problems. They come to me with their low energy. So I see it firsthand. There's people that have come to me with that. And it's not good. So I say this because this is the way out of that challenge. Now, part of that metabolic adaptation, like I mentioned, you've got those different systems dropping. So the first thing we need to realize is that by strategically increasing calories and carbohydrates and protein, all of the fats too, we can essentially spike that system back up. Now, what I want to do is I want to go through some of the key areas that I think are important to focus on, like the mechanisms, the tools, the things you need to know. First of all, though, I would say don't have a quote-unquote cheat day. Don't have a refeed day. A whole day is typically just way too much. You will spill over. People don't even realize that. People will have a cheat day. You're just asking to fail if you have a cheat day. You can literally nullify a week's worth of calorie deficit. Sticking to a plan for 6 days, you can completely nullify that in one day doing a quote-unquote cheat day. What I would tell you is do a refeed window. Refeed window. So rather than just one meal, do a window of time. But the window, you want it to be pretty tight. So, and the reason why I say a window of time is because that can then account for something like a dinner meal and a dessert. So I would tell you that a refeed window is going to probably be about 2 to 3 hours. 3 hours tops, about 2 hours max. 2 to 3 hours. Anything more than that, and you will most likely spill over with calories. Now, it's not bad that you spill over with calories. And in fact, that's part of the goal. But you need to spill over to a strategic amount. We don't want to be consuming an extra 10,000 calories. If you consume too many, that your body will just get oversaturated. You will get a negative effect. And so, first thing to understand is that with a refeed meal, typically I like to increase carbohydrates and fats and keep protein the same. Now, think about your week like a calorie cycle. So let's say on training days, you consume 200 grams of protein. Say your baseline is 200 grams of protein. So you consume 200 grams of protein on training days. You consume that on your active rest days as well. But the two macros that undulate is your fats and your carbohydrates. Those cycle up or down based on your output. So on a training day, you might push up to, say, 2,500 calories. And the things that get manipulated are your carbohydrates and your whole food fats. Then on your active rest days, your protein stays the same, but your fats and carbs come down. And so that sort of strips you into that fat loss zone. Now, if you just keep stripping into that fat loss zone, what will happen is you'll get that metabolic downregulation over time. It won't happen right away, but it does start to happen at a certain point. And by strategically pushing in 1 or 2 refeed meals a week, and I would say initially doing 1, that's going to drive up that calorie intake. So maybe like 2,800. So if your training days were normally 2,500, you push up above to say 2,800. The reason why I say to just do a subtle push at first is because you're often walking this metabolic tightrope where if you add too many calories in or the food is too inflammatory, the biofeedback response you will get will make you feel awful. And I would actually say that that's one of the most important parts of this puzzle. So I want to start this whole conversation outside of redefining cheat meals and refeeds by talking about the idea of healthy food upgrades. So most people, when they're thinking about a cheat meal, they just want to go full glutton, eat all the fast food, the fried garbage, whatever the heck they love. I will tell you this. I'll be honest with you. I get it. I understand that you have nostalgia around certain foods. I understand that there's certain things you just really love. I also understand that at a certain point, if you don't start looking at your body, your vessel, as a freaking Rolls-Royce Phantom, and you treat it like a beat-up old pickup truck, that's what you're going to be. Would you pull up to a gas pump in a Rolls-Royce Phantom and just load it up with the crappiest fuel you could find? You wouldn't do that with your vehicle, but you're doing that with your body. And that's why, that's the difference between a beat-up old pickup truck of a human and a freaking Rolls-Royce Phantom. What standard are you? Now, look, maybe up to this point, you've been operating like a beat-up old pickup truck. That's okay. You didn't know. But as you learn more, you've got to reframe the way you see this stuff. You know, when people think to themselves, I've had people before say things like, I just feel like I'm really missing out on this and missing out on that. And I'm thinking to myself, you're just arguing for your limitations. If you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them. So the first thing I want to tell you is you just got to reframe the whole experience. You got to think of yourself as a Rolls-Royce freaking Phantom. You got to recognize that ideally you want to put that high octane fuel in. You got to think about all the goals and dreams and things you want to achieve by being that 2.0 version of yourself. Like, think about the financial situation you want to create. Think about the body you want, the respect you want to command, the way you want to be able to interact with your family. Think about best case scenario. At the end of 2026, if you had the business, the body, everything that you envision and dream, like, how freaking good would that feel? That's what you need to set your sights on. That's what you need to remind yourself of when you're around a bunch of gluttons who want to eat a pile of garbage and you choose to be an operator. I've spoken at mastermind events and seminars, big ones before, where I would go in, I'd be talking, and I'd sit down at the buffet that they have for lunch, and I just drink water because I usually fast through the day when I'm at these events because I want to feel really sharp and dialed in. So I just fast. And everyone else is slamming back the food, burping, sweating. And it's funny because after lunch, you can tell the energy in the room just plummets. Everyone's sedated. Everyone feels like they need to take a nap. And I'm just like sharp as heck. And I love that feeling. I'm not even talking from a sort of a holier than thou righteous point of view. Because I was there at one point. I've been there before. I did a lot of stupid stuff, you know? I'm far from perfect. But I love that feeling of feeling light and vital where you don't feel like you got any freaking gas and you feel just sharp, man. I love that feeling. That's where the magic happens. Like, your best results in your life are going to come from that place. So the first thing that I would need you to understand is that you need to be thinking about the quality of the food. So when we're thinking about a refeed meal, I don't just want you to be like, well, I really love just fried chicken. And so you just want to eat a bunch of trans fat. What I would be encouraging you to think about is, and this is also, by the way, why being in my tribe, whether it's in the Business Athlete Council, one-on-one stuff with PeakX, or the Anomaly Project course, is such a good place to be because I have and know all the healthy food upgrades. I call them healthy food upgrades, where you would be amazed at the type of foods there is that you can swap for the thing that you love, that you don't even know exists, and it tastes basically like the original thing. And the macro breakdown and the inflammatory response it creates is so much better. I mean, I'll just rattle off a few examples for you right now. So for baking mixes, protein from like sort of brownies and donuts and pancakes and cookies. Macro Mike is a great brand based out of Australia. We do big Macro Mike orders. My daughter Zia doesn't eat anything other than that. Because most people don't realize that your kid's behavioral problems and your kid's ADHD and your ADHD comes from a bunch of inflammatory sugar and junk food. That's the software you're putting into your system, and it's operating like malware, and then you're wondering why the system is crashing. So Macro Mike is a fantastic high protein, low allergen set of baking mixes. Amazing stuff. So that's one classic healthy food upgrade. You could literally add in a mug cake or a donut every day if you planned it right. But especially for like a refeed, you could add in a few of these things. So that's one example. Another example is like if someone likes soft drinks or juice, getting the stir-flavored water drops. S-T-U-R, stir. So rather than drinking juice, I'll tell you, if you're adding in juice, you just need to stop that right now. Like that's just going to drive your blood sugar through the freaking roof. It's going to wreck your insulin sensitivity. There's no reason to be consuming that unless you're running like a marathon, unless you need it during a session of training because you're such a high performer. Outside of that, use stir-flavored water drops or Zevia soda waters. So most soda waters suck. LaCroix sucks. Perrier sucks. Zevia is amazing. It's got a great taste. So I say this because right out of the gate, there's liquids that you can consume that are way, way better for you than the garbage that most people think is their only option. There is good types of pasta. Brahmi pasta is a protein pasta with organic ground lentil flour. So the macro breakdown is phenomenal. Dave's Killer Bread. There's a lot of different breads. There's like low calorie options too. But Dave's Killer Bread or Ezekiel bread, much, much better quality. Sprouted grain. Sprouted grain is much better on the gut. Much better for absorption. If you have issues with gluten, like some of my students do, Pacha bread. Pacha is a seed-based bread. Can you see here how there is literally swaps for everything? And the good thing about that is that it allows you to have the foods that you're familiar with, love, and enjoy, have it as an intentional part of like a refeed process, but you're not getting the massively negative inflammatory downstream response. That's the main reason that I tell you to shy away from eating like really processed crappy stuff, because it's not just about the calories. It's not just about the calories or the carbs or the fats. It's about the inflammatory response that food is creating. And so, two things. One, it's worth knowing your food sensitivities. One of the things that people will do when they come into my business athlete council, and especially with my one-on-one PCAX, is we'll run a food sensitivity test. Because there will more than likely be foods that you have a sensitivity / allergy to. And if you are adding those in as part of your refeed meal, you will feel terrible. You'll feel super bloated. Typically, the responses that people will get that are not ideal is you'll get bloated, you might get diarrhea or constipation, you'll notice your heart rate increases, you'll get more cravings and hunger. Have you ever noticed that when you've been eating something off and you actually feel more hungry the next day? That's a hormonal response. Often brain fog and mood. So like I know for me, the acute responses are typically digestive issues on the same day, and then after the next day, you'll typically notice that your mood is lower and you feel more anxious, and you may get more brain fog. That is the downstream effect that these junky processed foods will have on your system. And so the biggest reason that I like to use healthy food upgrades is it takes your old meal that you love and it allows you to upgrade it in a way that the inflammatory response is substantially less. And that's when you feel good. That's when your digestion feels better. It's when you perform at a higher level. Because again, all of the stuff we talk about comes back to being a business athlete. I don't care about you just getting abs if it comes at the expense of your energy and mood, and so you're a cranky old fart for your kids and your partner, and you have no mental capacity for anything productive to get yourself into an amazing financial position. What's the point in that? And so I would say to you, if you love burgers and fries, you get some Dave's Killer Bread buns, you get a nice, clean, high-quality patty, You throw your rainbow veg in there. You know, you got your red, you got your green, you got your orange. Throw some pickles in there as well. You use a healthier condiment like G sauce, G-E-E, G sauce. You put a bit of that on there. You cut up your gold potato and you air fry it into wedges. So now you have a plate of air fried potato wedges with no extra oils and calories that are just kind of like junk calories. And you have a clean burger as well. And so you get that fuel, you get those extra calories, you're getting that burst of carbohydrates and fats, but you're getting a good inflammatory profile as a downstream response. And if you do that all the time, watch what will happen. Watch what will happen. It'll be profound. And so the first thing we always want to be thinking about is that healthy food upgrade. Now, the main reason for this is we want to make sure that your digestive response is optimal. Before I touch on that, I want to talk about when you should try to position this meal. So you might say, okay, well, does it matter when I do it? Can I do it whenever I want? So if you wanted to gain body fat, like if you were going to come up with I'm going to do this the worst way possible starter pack, you would train Monday to Friday. You'd train hard. You'd eat pretty well. You'd stick to your plan. And then in the weekend, you'd sit on your butt all weekend. Your step count would go from 15,000 to 5,000. You wouldn't lift weights. You wouldn't train either because you're at home. And you just would get loose with all your other parts of your diet. That's what you would do if you wanted to get as fat as possible. Because now what you're doing is you're taking that meal that could have been strategic and you're just throwing it in the worst possible place where your physiology will not leverage it like it could. There's this concept called partitioning ratios. So partitioning ratios are basically this idea of when you eat calories, your body will partition those calories to different functions. So some of the things that will dictate your unique partitioning ratios is your sex hormones. So a man eating the same amount of calories as a woman might partition more calories towards muscle building because he has a higher testosterone profile. So that's an example of one avenue of partitioning. Another avenue of partitioning is your insulin sensitivity or your insulin resistance, aka, someone who's pre-diabetic. If you are very insulin sensitive, when you get those calories into your system, you will partition a lot of them towards muscle glycogen, which helps with training and performance and muscle building. If you're insulin resistant, like most people are, you will just pile drive those calories either into your fat stores, your hips, butt, and thighs, or you'll let it sit in your bloodstream. And that high level in your bloodstream will give you brain fog and make you think you have ADHD. And then you'll take Ritalin for that, and it's not even the problem. 9 times out of 10, not even the problem. And so the first thing I'll say is that you've got to get the timing right. You have to be intentional. So I would be looking at your weekly schedule. I would sit down with your family, sit down with your partner on a Sunday, and map out, what do we have this week? Do you want to do a date night or a date lunch? Do we have any birthday parties? Is there any events we have to go to? What would you like to have as a fun meal? Would you like to have pizza or lasagna? Or, what would you enjoy? And plan it. Have some fun around it. Plan it with some intentionality. Don't just let it be this thing that you do at the end of the day because you're tired and stressed from a long week of work and you just kind of slam back a bunch of unthoughtful, unplanned garbage. Like, plan it as part of a strategy. So first thing is is it going to be a Friday evening? Is it going to be a Saturday lunch? When one window of time, where is it going to be? That's the first thing. The second thing is ideally, and I'm going to give you best case scenario here. I'm not saying you have to do all of these things, but if you want to set yourself up to be an A player, do as many of them as you can. That's the thing I always want you to remember. I'm going to give you the best case scenario, but if you're not there yet, or you just feel like you can't do it all, do what you can and build on that. But I would challenge you to push yourself beyond that comfort zone that you've been telling yourself you have. So the next part of it is you want to structure your training around this refeed meal. So generally what I would like to see have happen is I would like to see you train on the day you do the refeed, and then ideally train the day after the refeed. So think of the refeed, think of your training like two bookends of your refeed structure. Your refeed's in the middle, and then your training is on each side of that bookend. It encapsulates the refeed. And the reason for this is because when you train and you stimulate all that muscle, you're dumping glycogen out of your system. You're basically emptying your long-range fuel tanks. Imagine you have a bunch of fuel tanks on your vehicle, long range. You're emptying those fuel tanks. So when you pull up to the gas station, you have room to pump the gas into these fuel tanks. If you don't have room, it's just going to spill all over the floor, and that's what fat gain looks like. So you want to empty some of those tanks. Also, by doing this, you turn on what's called muscle protein synthesis. That's basically a signal to your body, hey, we just broke down the muscle, we just trained. Let's make sure that with the new calories coming in, that we start building more muscle. And like I've said, remember, part of the reason why people hit a wall is because they don't focus on building enough muscle, especially the ladies. Because the muscle is metabolically active tissue. That's the stuff that is like the engine of your vehicle. Without it, it's way harder to get lean. It's why I can stay at like 6 to 8% body fat pretty effortlessly at this point. Because my metabolic engine is so big that I just burn all the calories while I'm sleeping. That's the point. You cannot just cardio and train your way to 6% body fat without just wrecking yourself. You have to play a smarter game. So the first thing is position your training. The second thing is, I would say, pick on the day a workout or a muscle group that you want to maximize the most. So let's say for the ladies, you want to really work on your glutes and your legs. I would make sure that refeed meal is positioned on a leg day. Maybe for the guys, your shoulders and your chest, you want to bring that up. I would make sure that you position it you'd move your training around to make that work. So even if you have to swap a few days of your training, reposition the training. So normally if you did legs on a Tuesday, but now you position it on a Thursday, or a Friday, I should say, a Friday. Because the muscles are going to be more primed for muscle building when you train those and then you refeed on them. So I would definitely be trying to focus on those things. It's not to say that you have to do all these things, but this is how the pros operate. This is how the A players will execute. Now, the other things that I would say is make sure that everything else you do on that day is consistent. Keep the variables consistent. And what I mean is that often a lot of people, when they're having a refeed meal, usually it's sort of associated with a day of like sloppy behavior. And so maybe they go from getting 15,000 steps, but now they're getting 5,000. Like that in and of itself is something that you want to improve. So I would be saying, look at your step count, look at your sleep cycles. Keep everything as uniform as you can. I would also say make sure that all your other meals and snacks are dialed in and part of your existing plan. If you start adding and changing a lot of things through the day, those variables will typically throw off your digestion, and it will throw off just what you're doing. You won't know why you're feeling all foggy and tired. You won't know if it's from the refeed or if it's from just other random snacks and things you've been adding in, because you can't keep control of the variables. So keep everything else locked in as strategically as you can. I would also think about maybe tapering back a little bit on your fibrous rainbow vegetables for your other meal. So let's say, for example, you're going to do the refeed meal for dinner. I would probably do about 50% of the rainbow fibrous vegetables for my lunch meal that I normally do. Why? Because I find that on the refeed days, leaving a little bit of extra room in your stomach for the digestive process to take place, especially if you're adding, an extra 400 calories over your normal level, that room's got to come from somewhere. And so if you keep doing your big normal sized meals, but then you add in a big refeed too, you are going to feel pretty bloated. You'll feel big and bloated and uncomfortable. And to me, like I've often said, that is not a good thing. I would encourage you guys to eat to about 80% capacity, leaving 20% space, because that space is where your higher level thinking exists. That space is where you really feeling your emotional intelligence and not using food to numb and sedate yourself exists. You make better decisions and you feel better. You move more when you're in that place at 80%. And I just know it's a fact because you think of any time where you're feeling really big and bloated, you typically won't want to walk much. So all your habits downregulate because of that. So I say this, so leave a little bit of space. Taper back a touch on your rainbow veg. You don't have to remove them, but just be conscious of those portions outside of that meal. Now, I would also tell you that depending on what you plan to do, adding in a couple of green juices, like a Shuja cold pressed juice, Shuja Uber Greens or Shuja Mighty Dozen, I think you can add in a little bit of the cold pressed juices just to really help bolster the immune system and push a lot of those phytonutrients into your system so that when you have this meal, if it does have a bit of an inflammatory response, your body's ready for it. Your body can handle it more proficiently because you've been nurturing it with a lot of those phytonutrient-rich chemicals. When I get people to run my immunity protocol, for example, I'll get them to use the Shuja immunity shots and Shuja Mighty Dozen, Shuja Uber Greens to bolster that immune function. So if they do get sick, their body's already able to handle that response way more proficiently. So I would even say those cold press juice tactics on a refeed day just add to your intentionality. It's just going to make you feel and perform at an even higher level. So it's the type of things I do. Now, beyond the dietary stuff, I will tell you that I think having some type of digestive protocol, digestive supplementation stack ready for you is a good thing. I do this all the time because I want to make sure that the food I'm consuming is broken down really effectively, reducing down any dietary strain that I would get, and I want to absorb it very well. And so, for example, when I know I'm going to be doing a refeed meal, I'll use the following things. So I use a good quality digestive enzyme. So and I usually do like a double dose of it. Like I'll do more. I want those digestive enzymes to come in and really help dissolve and break down all the food so my body doesn't have to do as much work. I'm just reaping the benefit of that sort of pre-dissolved state. That's the first thing. The next thing is something to help with stomach acid quality and concentrations. So a little bit of betaine, HCl, and pepsin, for example, because that's going to help just make sure that the hydrochloric acid in your stomach is optimal. So when that food lands in there, it's getting broken down properly. Part of the reason why people get gas or issues with the digestion, they feel bloated, is that their stomach acid concentrations suck. And so when the food hits it, it doesn't break down properly and it starts to ferment because it's not dissolving properly. If you've ever passed undigested food through before, like some people will do it with corn or like blueberries is one, that's a sign that there's an issue going on with stomach acid concentrations. Other things that I'll often add in as well is going to be some glutamine powder. So glutamine I find is a good one to help soothe any inflammatory response in the digestive system. There's a few different products that I would stack in. All this to say that I want to bring down inflammation in the gut lining, like with glutamine. I want to help improve the way the digestive enzyme mechanisms break food down, and I want to help enhance that stomach acid concentration. Those are the main things. Now, the other parts of this equation are going to be blood glucose management, where a lot of companies now will have what's called glucose disposal agents. I actually think these are a good, useful thing to use long-term strategically. So one compound that I like to use as what I would call a glucose disposal agent is berberine. So berberine is a Chinese herb that in the research has been shown to be almost as effective at controlling blood sugar levels as metformin, which is a diabetic drug. So I think that getting some berberine and using that as part of your supplement stack is a great idea, because berberine not only helps, it can help with digestion, but the main thing is it helps with blood glucose stability, and it also has anti-cancer properties, and it helps with lipid management. So lipid management is your cholesterol profiles, ApoB, HDL, that type of stuff. So it's really like 4 birds with one stone. So I like that for that reason. Another compound or another thing I like is Spring Dragon Longevity Tea. Spring Dragon Longevity Tea has a bunch of herbal compounds in it that have been shown in populations in Asia of people that lived over 100 consumed these every day. Gynostemma leaf, for example. And part of it is because it helps what's called the AMPK pathway, which is associated with blood glucose metabolism. I've drank this every day for probably 4 years straight, every day. Part of this process is you don't just want to think of these refeed tools as something you do when you want to be a glutton. You stack them in strategically as part of like an optimal maintenance process that allows you to be the best at what you do. So think of it as a prophylactic, like a proactive tool. Outside of those supplements, I would tell you, slow down the way that you eat and eat thoroughly. People don't realize that some of the digestive issues you get don't come because you're eating something that has a food sensitivity. It's coming because you're eating too fast and you're not chewing enough. As you age, your digestive enzymes decrease. And so that's also why I think adding the digestive enzymes in is so important. Because if you are a bit older, in your 60s, 70s, and you eat fast, and you don't produce enough digestive enzymes, you'll get digestive issues. And so it's really important that you factor in those variables. I would also say you want to make sure that when it comes to your training, that you're lifting weights on these days. I just wanted to make that specific. Like you're not just walking or rucking or doing some cardio, you're stimulating the muscle and you're doing resistance training on those days. Because that's going to be the thing that basically dumps out the glycogen out of your system. Really important. Now, there are other tools that can help you manage the way your body metabolizes all this food. The reason why I'm getting into the details here is because this is how you take that meal that you would normally just eat, like if you trained Monday to Friday, and then you did it in the weekend, and you did everything in the wrong position, and you just get fat. This is how we don't let that happen. So the other thing that I would say is on the refeed day, with that meal, make sure that you're hitting your target step count. I don't want to see you go from 15,000 a day, and then on the refeed meal day, you're at like 5,000. That's no bueno. That's not good. So you need to be intentional with planning this in ahead of time. You need to be thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to do my leg training on the Friday. I'm going to make sure that I walk in the morning. I'm going to hit my step count. I'm going to hit my hydration targets. I'm going to add in the Shuja cold pressed juices. I'm going to make sure that I'm decreasing my fibrous rainbow veg in my meal by 50%. I'm going to be taking these digestive supplement stacks and the blood glucose metabolism stuff to just have my body in a physiological state where it will just soak up those calories and pile drive them into muscle building and nothing into fat stores. That's exactly what will happen. Now, I would say, ideally, go for a walk before and after this window of time. If you're someone who has a walking pad and a standing desk, that is perfect because you're already going to be doing something like that. You'll be already walking before and after meals because you're on your walking pad and standing desk while you work and while you produce. I cannot tell you enough how much walking will play a positive effect on what your body does with the refeed meals and what your long-term fat loss looks like, to the point where the second episode of this podcast is on walking, aka NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It was literally the second episode after the introduction episode. That's how needle moving it is. So if you're one of the guys that's training really hard and you're taking the peptides and you're doing a bit of cardio and then you sit on your butt all day, that's also why your body fat's like 15 to 30%, because you're not leveraging these tactics that compound and they make a difference. So you got to start get that standing desk, get that walking pad, and leverage it into your system. Leverage it into your repertoire. Now, I would say when you're having this meal, walk for 5 to 20 minutes before and 5 to 20 minutes after. Now, if you really want to maximize things, 20 bodyweight squats before and after as well. Like I said, guys, you don't have to do any of this. I'm just giving you all the things that you can do. You choose how much of it you want to do. I personally don't really do the bodyweight squats. If I was going to eat a big refeed meal, if I was going to eat something that was clearly out of my normal rotation, I would do the squats. But normally when I'm just doing a reasonably healthy food clean update, sort of, moderate refeed like I do these days, I would just walk. I would just walk before and after. It's good for your digestion too. So if you feel like the digestive issues kick off with these refeed meals, the walking will help with that. So I just wanted to mention that because you can see here how it's not just taking a bunch of supplements, and it's not just eating a certain food, and it's not just the step count or the walking or the movement or the training. It's like a well thought out system, multi-variable system. But it doesn't have to be complicated, guys. At the end, I'm going to bullet point off and rattle off a list for you, and that's going to be everything that I would do in summary. So even if you're like, oh man, this is a lot of stuff, it's helpful, but it's just a lot, I feel overwhelmed. Part of the overwhelm, that's the path you have to walk. You have to embrace the idea that you were going to feel overwhelmed at times, and you're going to feel outside your comfort zone. Because everything you've achieved so far in your life is in your comfort zone. That's why you have it. And anything that you want to achieve is beyond that zone. It's why you don't have it yet. So you're going to feel this way. You're going to feel this way. Now, I want to drill home to you that importance of the healthy food upgrades. Because I would say that's the one area where a lot of fitness coaches don't talk about it. And it really has a negative effect on blood work, on your mood, on your performance. So they'll do cheat meals, but they'll just eat straight junk food. And that's why they feel depressed and foggy and anxious. And by the way, it can affect your skin. I notice with a lot of people, they get rashes, eczema and psoriasis, but they also break out in pimples, acne. That's very common. If I eat something very processed, I will typically get some acne and pimples about 3 or 4 days after. It's like clockwork. It's a hormonal response and an inflammatory response to the food. It's not good. Now, you might say, when I'm doing my refeed, should I add more protein? Well, like what type of foods should I be adding? And first of all, I would say, think of foods that you love and enjoy. Is it pasta? Is it burgers? What is it? A pizza? And then find a healthy food upgrade for that thing. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is generally I don't fret about the protein too much because I'm just trying to hit my protein target every single day regardless. So what I would be doing is I would just make sure you know typically how much protein you need for that meal. And if you need to add a little bit of extra protein on that pizza, like if you need to add a little bit of extra serving of protein or eat it on the side just to hit your protein target for the day, do that. Or you can push those protein calories in other areas. Maybe you add some more protein to your protein shake. So you're just kind of making sure you factor that in. Now, generally what I would tell you is just do a mixed ratio of whole food fats and carbohydrates. Like I said, do your best to focus on cleaner foods. So, for a pizza or a burrito, you might use a siete wrap instead of your standard normal wraps. You can add in some avocado to it. That's going to give you those healthy fats. You add in some G sauce instead of your typical processed garbage like Chick-fil-A sauces and stuff. So I say this of like, don't overthink the fats and the carbohydrates too much. I would just be focusing on total calories and protein. And as long as you're getting anywhere between 200 and 500 calories above your normal range, that's what I would start with. Now, it will vary person to person. This comes back to those partitioning ratios. If you're a muscular guy, you will be able to push up 500 calories or more. If you are a smaller woman or you're someone that has to lose a lot of body fat, you might only be able to do an extra 200 calories at first. But that's also why the focusing on muscle building is so important, because the muscle building is what increases that metabolic engine. That's the way to get lean long-term and stay there. Because that way, that muscle is metabolically active, and so it's going to raise your metabolic rate. Now, let's think about this from a perspective of, you kind of know how you need to operate on the day of the refeed. I would just tell you on the days coming into the refeed, make sure that you stick to the plan. Make sure you keep things locked in. You act like an operator, right? Like earn that meal. Be proud that you can sit down and enjoy that meal knowing you stuck to a system. You didn't act like a big giant infant and just eat a bunch of stuff because you're feeling emotional. Really work on that stuff. But then the next day, the day after, how do we approach the day after? So this is where we can play a game. We can play a strategy if we want. You don't have to do this, but typically you could just go straight back to your normal process, or you rip down into a bit of a fasting fat loss state. You don't have to do this, but let's say you really want to torch the body fat. I find that the day after, maybe you do a 24-hour fasting protocol where you sip on amino acids through the day, and then you just have like a nice big healthy dinner meal. And yeah, your calories are going to be lower than normal, and yeah, your protein will be lower than normal for one day. But your body, your metabolism is going to be revving from that refeed the day before, and then you're igniting, because your metabolism is revving, you then torch through those body fat stores when you are in that fasted state. That is the game changer. That's why this is so useful. So in terms of how do you know if you're ready to do something like this, right? Generally speaking, I would say that if you're coming from a place where you've had a lot of food addiction patterns and you are just really just trying to get a routine down, and you're used to eating a lot of junk food, this is a very useful tool for you initially, because it's going to give you some familiar territory, and it's going to give you some stuff that you enjoy while you have a framework. Because a lot of people, the mistake they make is they're 300 pounds or something, they need to lose 100 pounds, and they just white knuckle the heck out of their diet. They eat like boiled chicken and broccoli, and they just white knuckle the living daylights out of their diet, and that lasts for about 2 weeks, and then they just implode on themselves. So the refeed meals act essentially like a dietary break. It allows you to touch some familiar territory. It allows you to hit that dopaminergic center in the brain that gives you that sort of positive reward for a food that you enjoy. It will reduce binge eating pressure, because now you have a target that you can stick with. I definitely find in my students it increases long-term compliance to a process. So longer term, if you know you're going to be able to do a refeed meal each week or every 2 weeks or whatever you determine that you should be doing, it allows you to shoot for that target. It makes you a lot more consistent with all the other things. This strategy, when used right, can change the game for you. You can time it as a date night. You can time it as a birthday. You can coincide it with a mastermind event. You might be going out for like a lunch with, someone important. You can time it with that. You can basically use this and splice it into your lifestyle to still connect with your family, your loved ones, your team in a way where it's enjoyable to you. So I say all this. let's summarize so you have the mental map laid out. I would say doing one of these once a week at the most initially, even once every 2 weeks to start with if you really have a bunch of weight to lose. I would tell you to make sure that you train on the day that you do the refeed. Bonus points for training the day after as well. I would make sure that you position a muscle group or a training that you want to improve the most on that day. So maybe moving your training schedule around just a little bit. I would make sure that you're hitting your step count. Don't go from 15,000 to 5. I would make sure that you have a normal sleep pattern that night. We don't want you to come out of the gate all insulin resistant because you stayed up till 2 a.m. Get your regular sleep pattern in. I would reduce your fibrous rainbow veg in your other meal, if you have another meal, by 50% to leave a little bit of room. We want you to eat to 80% capacity, not stuffed and full and bloated. Like, you got to have that space because that will help you perform. We want to make sure that you think of a healthy food swap for this stuff. You know, get a Ninja Creamy and make some Ninja Creamy protein ice cream instead of eating Ben and Jerry's. There are swaps for everything. I talk about these a lot in my training groups, by the way. So if you want help with that, get in the tribe. Stop guessing and bootstrapping. Now, beyond that, make sure that you have those digestive supplements and those blood glucose stabilizing processes in place that you can use to just further complement everything that you do. So the digestive enzymes, the betaine HCl for the stomach acid, the glutamine powder to soothe the digestive tract. You want to do the berberine for the blood glucose control, the Spring Dragon longevity tea for the blood glucose metabolism. All of these things will help you long-term stay locked in. Slow down how you eat. Enjoy this meal, man. Enjoy it and be present and just really embrace this and recognize that you put in the work to get this. Because you think of yourself as that Rolls-Royce Phantom now, and you know you want to put that high-octane fuel into your system. Frame the whole experience differently. Frame from a place of now you're refeeding the system so you can train harder and you can overperform in your training, and that's going to build muscle, and that's going to raise your metabolism. And that's how the A players operate. That's how the A players operate. Don't overdo it and then beat yourself up and starve yourself into submission with that binge purge cycle stuff that so many people do. Oh, I ate too much. I ate a bunch of junk. I'm just going to starve myself and do a ton of cardio. You got to get off that bandwagon. You got to get off that train. It's so important because that's not going to serve you moving forward. It's not. So outside of all of that, these meals can reignite your metabolism. They can re-stimulate your sex hormone profiles. They can improve your insulin sensitivity. If you do them right, they will be okay on your digestive system and your biofeedback. You can use it to incorporate it into any type of plan, vacation, date nights, different events. That's how we weave in living a life. You got Christmas Day or Thanksgiving Day, you got Easter. Great, refeed meal. Splice it in. But you got to be intentional with everything else. If you're making these exceptions for yourself, but you're not stacking the cards in your favor with everything else, with like your step count and your training and everything else, do not be surprised when your digestion feels terrible and you keep wheel spinning and you're getting brain fog and you're feeling beat up because you're not putting the refeed meal in the right context where those partitioning ratios turn you into a superhuman business athlete. It's going to turn you into a beat-up old pickup truck. So who do you want to be today? And realize, go out there and know that this strategy is a long-term play. I use this a lot, but I always make sure it's a clean food now because I value so much that idea of putting high-octane fuel into the Rolls-Royce Phantom because I've seen how it affects my mood and my temperament and my energy, and that to me is the currency of the business athlete in 2026. Gone are the days where we just white knuckle and bulldoze our way to some financial success, but you're fat and inflamed and puffy and wore out and irritable with your kids. That's no longer a victory in my mind anymore. And the real operators, they recognize that. And they treat themselves like a high-level athlete where they get the pros in their corner to help them structure their training and their routine and their supplementation and their peptides. So when they go out on that NBA final or that Super Bowl final, they freaking dominate. And that is the ethos of the business athlete.